Welcome, and thank you for joining me for another installment of our Renewed Mind series. Adding meaning can also be described as making assumptions about what people are thinking or meaning. And so I like adding meaning because making assumptions about what people are is just a little bit longer of a description. So is adding meaning in the Bible? It is. When we look at the fact that it really is making an assumption about what someone thinks or what someone is doing, then we can find places in Scripture where this has taken place. If you look into Acts chapter 2, verses 2 through 17,
"And they were beside themselves with amazement and were greatly perplexed, saying one to another, 'What could this mean?' But others were laughing and joking and ridiculing them, saying, 'They are full of sweet wine and are drunk.' But Peter raised his voice and addressed them, 'These people are not drunk as you assume, but this is the beginning of what was spoken through the prophet Joel.'"
So as it says, they heard the disciples speaking in all these different languages, and they assumed that they were under the influence of something. They were adding meaning. They heard these other languages and thought, well, that definitely happened because all these guys got together and they were partaking of some very interesting grape juice, if you will. So adding meaning can be sad because we can actually miss out on something amazing that God is doing because we assume that people are not in their right minds. But maybe we should ask more questions before we make judgments. I would encourage you to give people the benefit of the doubt, especially if it's someone that you know and they say or do something that seems out of character for them. Maybe they mean something different than what you think based on their actions or their words. Here's a good one. In Proverbs 18:2, it says,
"A close-minded fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his personal opinions, unwittingly displaying his self-indulgence and his stupidity."
This is why if we take what someone says or does at face value and then ask questions to clarify what they mean by that without adding judgment into the question, we can count ourselves among the wise instead of the foolish, since the foolish don't care about really understanding what's going on, but just expressing their thoughts and opinions about what they see going on. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 1, it says,
"Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone into the world."
So this verse is kind of on the other side of what we've been talking about. I've been saying that we don't want to think negatively of other people based on what they say or do when we might not completely understand what they meant. This verse is saying to test and approve and see what people actually mean and where their heart truly is before really believing that everything they say or do is what they're actually intending or meaning. When I read that verse, I kind of think of like someone who says something really nice and has a smile, but in their eyes there's just something that makes me not be able to really believe that they're happy and smiley or that they mean good for me or mean well. And so I don't want to make an assumption because it's very possible that they're just having a bad day. I don't want to make an assumption that they have negative plans, if you will, but we also want to guard ourselves, and like this says, test the spirits. How I would do that in the real world is see, does this measure up with this person's usual way of acting or speaking? Or is it possible that they're trying to trap me? I know as a pastor, there are some people that befriend you just so that they can hopefully get the inside scoop on things so that they can gossip. And so someone might come to you as a friend and seem friendly, but really they're hoping that you'll open up about other people so that they can tell others about them and have control and know what's going on behind the scenes and that kind of thing. And I think that's what it means by test the spirit, is to figure out why people are saying and doing what they're doing before making an assumption in your own mind. And I love in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, where it says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." And many people like to quote that and say that Christians are not supposed to make judgments ever. But then in that verse before it says to test the spirits. And when you test something, eventually you're going to make a judgment or a decision about the outcome of that test. So I think it's important that we take all of Scripture together. In Proverbs 25, verse 8, it says,
"Do not bring hastily to court, for what will you do in the end if your neighbor puts you to shame?" And in the Message Bible, it plainly says, "Do not jump to conclusions. There may be a perfectly good explanation for what you just saw."
And even there, it's really showing how adding meaning is about making a rush to judgment. Showing there how if you bring someone to court before knowing all the information and then you realize that really there was no need to bring them to court, there was some really good explanation for whatever, it brings us to shame instead of supporting our argument. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, it says,
He writes the same way in all his letters, speaking in them of these matters. His letters contain some things that are hard to understand, which ignorant and unstable people distort as they do the other scriptures, to their own destruction. Therefore, dear friends, since you have been forewarned, be on your guard so that you may not be carried away by the error of the lawless and fall from your secure position.
This goes back to what I was saying about sometimes there are people around you that are really just trying to get information that they can use against you or against someone else. And so we really want to make sure that we do not have loose lips. Loose lips sink, what is it? Loose lips sink ships? That's not it. But anyway, we want to make sure that we are not gossiping or telling stories about other people that don't need to be going around. In John 20, verse 29, it says,
Jesus said to him, Because you have seen me, do you now believe? Blessed, happy, spiritually secure, and favored by God are they who did not see me and yet believed in me.
This is specifically talking about Jesus and how the disciples have seen him and seen the miracles that he's done. And there's others that will only ever hear the stories and believe. How blessed it is for us who believe and yet didn't get to walk around with Jesus. We can also logically take this thought process into our relationships with other people as well. And for me, it really makes sense that this is when we give people the benefit of the doubt and we think the best of others when we don't have enough information to think otherwise. So how does the Bible say that we can combat adding meaning? In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 7, it says,
Love bears all things, regardless of what comes, believes all things, looking for the best in each one, hopes all things, remaining steadfast during difficult times, endures all things without weakening.
Love is the answer. If we're truly loving each other and loving the one that we are wondering what they mean by what they said, or did, we're not going to have to worry about adding meaning. In the previous verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 6, it says,
It, love, does not rejoice in injustice, but rejoices with the truth when right and truth prevail.
Again, love rejoices in the truth. So if we truly seek the truth, then what we find, I think, is most of the time gonna be good. If this video today has helped you in any way to think a little bit deeper about how to renew your mind, please like and subscribe and check out more. See you next time.